Black teen helped an elderly man up, then saw the tattoo on his wrist. Sir, don't move. You're gonna hurt yourself. Malik dropped his backpack and ran before he even finished the sentence. The late bus had just hissed away from the curb, headlights disappearing into the drizzle, when the old man's cane slipped on the wet sidewalk. Groceries rolled out of his bag, apples bouncing, a can spinning in circles while his thin body crumpled toward the concrete. His head came inches from the curb before his shoulder took the hit. Cars rolled past with music thumping. Someone laughed from across the street, but nobody moved. Nobody except the skinny black teenager in a faded hoodie and scuffed sneakers, breath still fogging from the run he'd made to try and catch that bus. Malik slid onto his knees beside the man. It's okay. It's okay. I got you, he said, voice a little shaky. The old man groaned, eyes squeezing shut, rain peppering his gray hair. His glasses lay crooked beside him. Hip gave out, the man muttered. Stupid sidewalk. His voice was rough, like gravel. Malik picked up the glasses, wiped them quickly on his sleeve, then reached for the man's arm. The skin felt thin and cold under his fingers, bones sharp. On three. All right, Malik said. 1, 2. The man's hand twisted as he tried to grab Malik's wrist for support. The sleeve of his coat slid back, and that's when Malik saw it, a tattoo right there on the inside of the old man's pale wrist. Faded with age, the ink blurred but still clear enough to recognize. A black symbol inside a circle, jagged, hateful, burned into the flesh. He had seen it before, spray-painted on the wall near his housing project, on the news after a rally, scrawled on the door of his cousin's barbershop. It was the same symbol his mother had cried over when they watched the coverage of the night his father didn't come home. For a split second, Malik's grip tightened. His mind screamed, not him, not this. But the old man's legs were shaking, his face twisted in pain, and Malik's hands were already under him. Lifting, he helped the man stand anyway, while the tattoo on that wrist burned in Malik's mind like a fresh wound torn open. You okay to walk? Malik asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The old man winced. Bench, he said, nodding toward the bus stop shelter a few steps away. Just to the bench. Malik hooked an arm around his back, feeling just how light he really was. The man's breath came out in short, sharp puffs, fog mixing with the cool night air. Malik's eyes kept drifting down, helplessly, to the wrist. The symbol glared up at him every time the sleeve slipped, that crooked shape that had meant you don't belong his whole life. They eased onto the metal bench together. Rain tapped on the glass behind them. Cars swished by. The street lamp buzzed overhead. The world seemed to keep going like nothing had changed, except everything inside Malik had. Thank you, the man said, closing his eyes for a second. Could have cracked my head open on that curb. Yeah, well, gravity almost snitched on you, Malik muttered before he could stop himself. The man opened one eye. What's that? Nothing, Malik said quickly, looking away. His knee bounced, nerves crawling under his skin. Normally, he'd put his headphones in, shut the world out, wait for the next bus. But his bus had already gone, and his mom would text if he was too late. And right now, he was sitting shoulder to shoulder with something he'd been taught to hate. And he wasn't sure if that made him weak, or human, or both. The man followed Malik's gaze downward and seemed to realize his sleeve was still pushed up. Slowly, he pulled it back down, covering the mark. His fingers trembled as they did. You hungry? The old man asked suddenly. There's a diner on the corner. I was heading there anyway. You just saved me from a hip replacement and a funeral. Least I can do is buy you some fries. Malik almost laughed. Man, I don't eat with. He caught himself, jaw clenching. He heard his mother's voice in his head. Don't ever let hate make you what they already think you are. He looked at the old man's lined face, the way he was trying not to show how much his hip hurt. Then he looked at where the tattoo was hiding under the sleeve, like a secret leaking poison. 1 plate of fries, Malik said slowly, and I'm choosing the table. He stood, offered the man his arm again. As they crossed the street toward the diner's neon glow, Malik couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into something a lot bigger than one free meal. The bell over the diner door jingled as they walked in, bringing a small burst of warm air and frying oil with it. The place smelled like coffee, cheap burgers, and long conversations. A TV in the corner murmured the late news. A couple of truckers sat at the counter, hunched over plates. The waitress, a woman with curly hair and tired eyes, glanced up. Her gaze flicked from Malik's hoodie to the old man limping beside him, then softened. "Hey, Mr. Ellis," she said. "Rough night." "You could say that," the old man Mr. Ellis replied with a tight smile. "Got myself a guardian angel, though." He nodded toward Malik. The words stung more than they should have. Malik didn't feel like anyone's angel, not with the image of that tattoo burned into his brain. They slid into a booth by the window. Malik made sure to take the side facing the door, old habit from growing up where sirens were background noise. "I'm Malik," he said finally, more out of politeness than desire. "Robert Ellis," the man replied. "Everyone just calls me Rob, except my doctor. He calls me you again." Malik gave a short breath of a laugh despite himself. The waitress came, took their order fries for Malik, soup and tea for Rob, and poured water into their glasses. The ice clinked, tiny sounds in a room that suddenly felt too quiet. When she left, Malik's eyes dropped again to Rob's hand as it wrapped around the water glass. The sleeve had slipped just enough to show the edge of the tattoo. His chest tightened. "You keep staring at my wrist," Rob said, voice slow. "You saw it when you picked me up, didn't you?" Malik's jaw flexed. He met the old man's eyes, anger and confusion fighting inside him. "You mean the little hate symbol you got burned into your skin?" he asked. "Yeah, kinda hard to miss." Rob didn't flinch at the bite in his tone. He just looked tired. "It was a long time ago," he said. "My dad's funeral was a long time ago too." Malik shot back. "Doesn't mean I forgot his face." The air between them thickened. The news on the TV faded into a hum. The fries hit the table with a soft thud. Unnoticed, Rob's fingers slipped away from the glass. For a second, his hand hovered in the air, empty, like he didn't know where to put it. Then he rolled his sleeve up on purpose, exposing the whole tattoo. The lines were blurred, parts of it half faded like someone had tried to erase it and failed. "I'm not gonna pretend it's not what it is," Rob said quietly. "I did that. I wore it. And I did things I'd give my life to undo." Malik's heart pounded in his ears. "Then maybe you should start with telling me," he said. "Because where I come from, people with that mark don't just slip and fall at bus stops. They make other people fall. And sometimes, they don't get back up." Rob swallowed, throat working. "All right," he murmured. "You want the truth. You deserve it more than anyone." And for the first time in years, he began to talk about who he used to be. "I grew up in the kind of house where anger was the only thing that ever showed up for dinner." Rob started, staring at the steam curling from his tea. "Dad drank. Mom cried. The TV screamed. Nobody asked why I stayed out so late. They just yelled when I came home." Malik listened, arms crossed, body turned slightly away, but ears tuned to every word. "I was 19 when I met them," Rob went on. "They were the first men who ever looked at me like I mattered, told me I was one of them, gave me a jacket, a place to belong, said all my problems had one simple answer. Them." He nodded toward Malik, toward the world outside. "People who didn't look like us." He tapped the tattoo with a fingertip that shook. "This was my membership card, my armor. I wore it like it made me somebody. Being angry felt powerful. Marching, yelling, scaring folks. I thought I was winning." The word tasted bitter. "Then what?" Malik asked, voice clipped. "Then my son was born," Rob said. His eyes softened in a way Malik hadn't seen yet. Little guy, blonde hair, big blue eyes, laughed at everything. "I held him and thought, I'd kill for you." He swallowed. "Never thought I might be teaching him to die for me instead." He took a breath that shook on the way out. When he was 16, he found my old photos. The rallies, the flags, the fights. He asked questions. I told him lies. Told him it was about pride, about protecting our own. He started hanging around some of my old friends' kids. said he was just having fun. You know what fun looks like in that world. Rob looked up, eyes glistening. It looks like fear on other people's faces. Malik's stomach twisted. Memories flashed broken windows in his neighborhood. Slurs shouted from passing cars. The night his dad didn't come home. One night, Rob continued. They went out with bats and masks, full of beer and slogans. I didn't stop him. I told myself he had to be a man. They found some guys outside a store. Words were said. Fists, then weapons. His voice cracked. What happened? Malik asked, even though some part of him already knew. They picked the wrong man, Rob whispered. He fought back. Someone pulled a knife. My boy got caught in the middle. By the time the police came, he was on the sidewalk, bleeding out. His last word was Dad. Not help. Not sorry. Just Dad. Silence sat with them at that table. The fries went cold. I went to identify his body, Rob said. On the way, I saw the news on the hospital TV. Racist attack leaves one dead, one critical. They showed the other man's picture too. I saw his wife, his kid, crying, and for the first time in my life, I saw us the way the world saw us. Monsters. He stared straight at Malik now. That was the night I stopped showing up to meetings, tried to get the tattoo removed, started volunteering with groups I used to hate. But this, he tapped his wrist again, this doesn't come off easy. Some stains don't. Malik's chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped a belt around his ribs and pulled. He thought of his father's photo on the mantel, his mother's quiet grief, the way hate had echoed through their lives like a gunshot that never stopped ringing. So yeah, Rob said hoarsely, you saw that tattoo, and you saw exactly what I used to be. But I need you to know, I'm trying every day not to die as that man. Malik looked at the old ink, the shaking hand, the lines on Rob's face carved by regret. Then he heard his own voice, low and rough. My dad died in an attack like that, and just like that. The past stopped being a story and turned into a collision. Rob's spoon slipped from his hand and clattered into the soup. The sound was small, but it cut through the diner like a shout. What did you say? He asked, voice barely there. I said my dad died in an attack like that, Malik repeated. His fingers picked at the edge of a napkin, tearing it into little white shreds. 11 years ago, outside a corner store on 8th. Police called it a hate crime. Said some punks came looking for trouble. The TV in the corner flicked to an old clip archive footage about rising extremist violence. Malik's eyes didn't move from Rob's face. He was just getting milk for my baby sister. Malik went on. Mom was home, tired from work. I was 5. I remember watching the clock. He always whistled when he came through the door. He never whistled again. Rob's breathing turned shallow. His gaze seemed to go somewhere far away. 8th Street, he whispered. 11 years. He fumbled for his glasses, even though they were already on his nose, as if clear vision would make memory less cruel. That night, Malik said, eyes hard now. They said one of the guys got hurt too. One of the attackers. I used to lie awake imagining his face. What I'd do if I ever met him. What I'd say. Sometimes, what I'd do to him. He pressed his lips together, fighting the tremor. And then today I helped some old man off the sidewalk and see that same symbol staring back at me. He leaned forward. So tell me, Rob, was it you? The question hung there, heavy as a verdict. Rob's shoulders sagged. His hand pressed against his chest like he was trying to hold his ribs together. I wasn't there, he said slowly. That night, I was home, drinking, waiting for my son to come back from teaching someone a lesson. Relief and disappointment crashed together inside Malik, leaving him dizzy. But, Rob continued, voice breaking, I knew where he was going. I knew what he'd learned. I knew the words I'd put in his mouth and the hate I'd wrapped around his heart. I might not have swung the bat or held the knife, but I built the boy who did. He looked Malik straight in the eyes, tears slipping down into the wrinkles at their corners. So, if you want to blame me, you wouldn't be wrong. Malik's fingers curled into fists under the table. He imagined lunging across the booth, imagined shouting, imagined years of grief pouring out in one violent moment. But all he saw in front of him was an old man drowning in his own guilt, clutching a pain that looked familiar. I spent years wishing I could find the man who killed my father, Malik said, voice low. I thought if I ever did, I'd make him feel what we felt, make him hurt like we hurt. He glanced at the wrist, then back to Rob's face. Problem is, he added, right now, you look like someone who's been hurting for a long time already. His chest ached with the weight of his own words. He didn't know if they were mercy or weakness, and for the first time since Malik sat down in that booth, Rob Ellis looked like he might actually break. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The diner noise faded into a blur, plates clinking, coffee being poured, the low murmur of strangers' lives. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and shining under the streetlights. You know what the worst part is? Rob finally said, voice rough. People still look at me and some of them see a hero. Old neighbors, old friends. They slap my shoulder and say, we showed them, didn't we? They don't know I spend every night seeing my boy on that sidewalk, seeing your dad on the news. He took off his glasses, wiped them with a napkin that didn't need wiping. His hands shook. I can't give you your father back. I can't give mine back either. All I've got left is this tired body and a lifetime of regret I can't outrun. Malik stared at his own reflection in the window. A skinny kid with tired eyes, hoodie too big, world too heavy. He saw his father's nose, his mother's mouth, his own anger sitting between them like another person at the table. My mom hates that symbol, Malik said. We saw it on TV once, painted on the sidewalk near where it happened. She made me cross the street, said she never wanted that thing in my eyes again. He looked back at Rob. You ever think about covering it up? I tried, Rob answered. Laser removal. Didn't finish the treatments. Doctor said my skin was too old, too thin. Hurt like hell. Some parts faded. Some didn't. Guess that's how sin works? It leaves enough behind to remind you who you were. Malik exhaled slowly. You still with those people? Rob shook his head quickly. No, haven't seen them in years. I go to meetings now. Talk to kids in schools when they let me. Tell them hate will use them, then throw them away. Doesn't feel like enough? Never will. Malik thought about the boys in his neighborhood. Angry, bored, scrolling their phones, getting pulled into things they didn't understand just because someone finally offered them a place to belong. He thought about how easy it would be to become exactly what everyone feared he'd be. My school does those assemblies sometimes, Malik said slowly. Some cop comes, talks about staying out of trouble. We all tune out after 5 minutes. Rob gave a humorless chuckle. Yeah, I've seen those. What if? Malik hesitated, the idea scary even as it formed. What if they heard it from someone like you instead? Not a cop, not a teacher. Someone who actually knows how ugly it gets. Rob blinked. You want me to talk to your school? I don't know what I want, Malik admitted. I know I hate what you used to be. I know I hate what happened to my dad. I know if I walk out of here and never see you again, I'll still be carrying all that hate alone. He swallowed hard. But if you stand in front of kids like me and tell them what hate cost you, and what it cost people like my dad, maybe that does something. Maybe it doesn't fix it, but maybe it stops the next tattoo, the next funeral. Rob stared at him like he was seeing something he didn't think existed. You'd do that after everything I told you. I'm not doing it for you, Malik said. I'm doing it for my father, for my mom, for every kid who thinks joining some angry group is going to make them feel less small. His hands were shaking now too, but he didn't hide it. And maybe I'm doing it for me. Because if I turn you into just a monster in my head, I become one step closer to the thing that killed him. Rob's eyes filled again. No words came out this time. He just nodded, slow and stunned, like someone who just been handed a verdict he never thought he deserved. And in that small, greasy diner, Malik realized the person with the most power in the room wasn't the one with the old tattoo. It was the kid deciding what to do with it. 2 weeks later, Malik stood in the back of his school gym, heart pounding harder than it ever did in any exam. Rows of students filled the bleachers, some whispering, some scrolling their phones. Teachers lined the walls, arms folded. The principal stood at the microphone, giving the usual speech about respect and choices. Malik's mom sat on the side, hands folded tight in her lap. She'd fought him on this. "I don't want that man anywhere near you," she'd said, tears hot in her eyes. "Near our family, after what people like him did to your father." "I know," Malik had said softly, "but maybe that's exactly why he has to be." He told her everything that night after the diner. The fall, the tattoo, the story, the regret, the offer. She'd listened with her back against the kitchen counter, staring at the fridge where his father's photo still hung, edges curled. Now, in the gym, her eyes were fixed on the stage. Today, the principal was saying, "We have a guest who's here to talk about something very serious: hate, and what it does to people. Please listen." Rob walked onto the stage slowly, leaning on his cane. There was a ripple of murmurs. To most of the kids, he was just another old man. To Malik, he was a bomb that could either explode or diffuse something inside all of them. Rob adjusted the microphone. His voice, when it came, wasn't polished. It wasn't grand. It was just real. "My name is Robert Ellis," he began. "I'm not a cop. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a hero. I'm a man who helped build the kind of hate that killed my own son, and other people's fathers, that got their attention." Phones lowered, heads lifted. He rolled up his sleeve. The tattoo showed, under the harsh gym lights. Gasps echoed. "This mark," he said, holding up his wrist, "once made me feel big, like I belonged, like I was better than people who looked different from me. I let that feeling turn into action. Words, then threats, then fists. I thought it was all just talk and fun until the night my boy died in a fight I'd been training him for since he was old enough to listen." He told them what he'd told Malik. The rallies, the lies, the grave. This time, though, he added something new. "Not long ago," he said, "I fell at a bus stop. A black teenager helped me up. He saw this tattoo. He had every right to walk away, every right to spit in my face, every right to hate me. Instead, he sat with me. He listened. He made me look at what I'd done, and he asked me to stand here today." Malik felt dozens of eyes turn toward him as Rob nodded in his direction. His ears burned, but he lifted his chin. "I can't tell you who to be," Rob went on. "I can only tell you this. Hate will offer you belonging when you feel alone. It'll give you a jacket, a slogan, a target. It'll make you feel powerful, until it takes everything from you. And even then, it won't be the one standing at your grave. It'll just move on to the next angry kid." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "If you hear anything from me today, let it be this. Don't let my story become yours. Don't let this," he tapped the tattoo, "decide who you hurt or who you are. You're bigger than the people teaching you to be small." In the back, Malik's hand curled around the strap of his backpack. He glanced at his mother. Tears were streaming down her face, but there was something else in her eyes too. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe the space where forgiveness could live someday. And for the first time since his father died, Malik felt like the past was doing something other than just haunting them. It was warning someone else. That evening, Malik walked Rob back to the bus stop. The roles felt reversed now. The old man moved a little straighter, like unloading his story had taken some weight off. Malik felt heavier and lighter all at once. "You did good in there," Malik said quietly. Rob smiled, a small, tired curve of his mouth. "I almost threw up on your principal's shoes," he admitted. "But, thank you." They reached the same bench where they'd sat that rainy night. The sky was clear now, streaked with pink and orange. Cars rolled by, shadows stretching across the pavement. Rob sat down slowly. Malik remained standing for a moment, looking at the man who had once worn hate like armor and now wore it like a chain he was trying to drag into the light. "You know, this doesn't fix everything," Malik said. "Not for my mom. Not for my dad. Not for you." "I know," Rob replied. "Some things don't get fixed. They just get faced." He tugged at his sleeve again, but this time, instead of hiding the tattoo, he pulled a strip of flesh-colored bandage from his pocket. Carefully, with old hands, he wrapped it around his wrist covering the symbol, not pretending it was gone, just choosing not to show it off anymore. I used to be proud of this, he murmured. Now, every time I look at it, I remember the man I never want to be again. Malik sat down beside him. For a few seconds, they just listened to the hiss of brakes, the distant siren, the soft chatter of people passing by, living their own stories. My dad used to say scars are proof that you survived something, Malik said quietly. Maybe the ones outside, and the ones inside too. Rob nodded. Maybe the point isn't pretending they're not there, he said. Maybe the point is what you do because they are. A bus pulled up, doors hissing open. People lined up. Neither of them moved yet. You asked me that night if I wanted to blame you, Malik said. I still do. Some days, I'll probably hate you. Hate what you stood for, what people like you took from us. I'd understand, Rob replied. But I'm also tired, Malik admitted. Tired of carrying something that keeps killing me while the ones who started it are already old or gone. He took a breath that felt like it came from somewhere deeper than his lungs. So, I'm not saying I forgive you. Not today. Maybe not ever the way people mean it. But I'm choosing not to let you, or that tattoo, decide who I am. I'm not going to live my life as a reaction to your worst choices. Rob looked at him with something like awe. That, he said softly, is the bravest thing I've ever seen. Malik stood, slinging his backpack over one shoulder. He held out his hand. After a brief hesitation, Rob took it. Their skin tones couldn't have been more different. Their histories couldn't have been more tangled. But in that simple grip, something shifted, not erased, not forgotten, just changed. As the bus doors closed behind Rob and the vehicle pulled away, Malik caught one last glimpse of him through the window, fingers resting over the bandaged wrist. The world around them still held the same broken pieces, old symbols painted under bridges, old stories whispered in bars, old wounds carried in hearts and on skin. But somewhere between a fall on wet concrete and a truth told in a school gym, two people had decided that their scars would be warnings, not weapons. And if there was a moral to any of it, it was this: you can't rewrite the marks life and choices leave on you, but you can choose whether they're a flag for hate or a reminder to love better than the ones who gave them to you.